Number 1. What we disown may appear in these assertions. First, no necessity nor circumstance supposable whatsoever can justify the murder of the righteous or innocent, or vindicate the unlawful taking away of their lives directly or indirectly, immediately or mediately, which in thought as well as deed we must abhor as a horrid breach of the sixth commandment, the guilt whereof may be incurred several ways, as by killing them immediately, as Cain did his brother Abel, or commanded them to be killed, as Saul commanded Doeg to kill the Lord's priests, or contriving their murder, as David did Uriah's, and Jezebel Naboth's, or counseling thereunto, as the people advised the princes to the murder of Jeremiah, and all that cried, Crucify Jesus, were murderers of Christ, or by procuring it, as Haman was guilty of the intended murder of the Jews, or concurring therein, as Joab was guilty of Uriah's death, as well as David, and Judas of Christ's, by betraying him, or by the patrociny thereof, defending and sparing the murderers when called, by office, to punish them, as David was guilty in not punishing Joab, Ahab in patronizing the murder of Naboth, or by consenting thereunto, as Saul consented to the death of Stephen, or by knowing and permitting and conniving at it, as is condemned in Proverbs 24, verses 11 and 12. Whether this be done under color of law, as Pilate murdered our Lord, Herod killed James, or without all color, by absolute power, Herod the Ascalonite murdered the infants, or whether it be done by purpose, as Joab murdered Abner and Amasa, or without previous purpose, yet with knowledge of the action and the perpetrating of it, as men may do in passion when provoked beside their purpose, or in a tumult without intending it beforehand, yet that is murder, Barabbas committing murder in the insurrection. For as the casual killing, contrary to intention, without knowledge, that's no breach of the command. And whatever may be said of necessitated delivering up the innocent, pursued by a potent enemy, to deliver the city from his fury, or of preferring our own life to our innocent neighbor, in a case when both cannot be preserved, and by preserving the one lawfully, the other happens to lose his life, I do not meddle with these cases. But since this is taken for granted by casuists, I infer, if it be lawful that an innocent man die in case of necessity, that others may be preserved, then much more is it lawful that the innocent, who are guilty of murdering the righteous all these ways above specified, and actually prosecuting their murdering designs by these methods, should rather be made to die than the righteous be destroyed. But of this sort of murder, taking away the life of the righteous, none hath the impudence to accuse that reproached people. Secondly, though a man kill an innocent unwittingly and willingly, besides his knowledge and against his will, yet he may be guilty of sinful homicide, if he was obliged to know that he was in hazard of it, and neglected to consider, lest a man might be killed by what he was doing, as if a man should shoot at random, when he doth know not, but some may be killed thereby. Or if one were hewing with an axe, which he either knew or might have known to be loose, and the head not well fastened to the helve, did not advertise those about him of it, if by flying off it happened to kill any person, he were not innocent. But if he knew not without any inadvertency, then he were guiltless. Deuteronomy 19, verse 5. See Durham on 6 Com. So, if a man built a house without battlements, he should bring blood upon his own house, if any man fell from thence. Deuteronomy 22, verse 8. But of this the question is not. Thirdly, though a person be not altogether innocent, nor to be reckoned among the righteous, but suppose him wicked and profane, and engaged in an evil course, and dishonorable to God, prejudicial to the church and kingdom, and very injurious to us, yet it may be murder to kill him, if he be not guilty of crimes that deserve death by the law of God. For the life of man is not subject to the arbitrament of any, but his who is the author of life and death. It is necessary to all to obey the law. Thou shalt not kill, without exception, but such killing as is approved by the author of the law, as saith Ames de Conscientia, cap. 31, question 2. Hence this people so much reproached with extravagant actions do abundantly clear themselves of that imputation of being of the mind to kill all that differ from them, which was the impudent forgery of the father of lies in their informatory Vindication, head 3. Quote, we positively disown, say they, as horrid murder, the killing of any because of a different persuasion or opinion from us, albeit some have invidiously cast this odious calumny upon us. Unquote. And it is as clear they that took the oath of abjuration swore a lie, when they abjured the apologetical declaration, insofar as it is asserted it was lawful to kill all employed in the king's service, when it asserted no such thing, as is showed above in Hint 3. To think so much, let be to declare it, far more to practice such a thing against all that serve the king, or any merely because they served him, or because they are in a wicked course, or because they have oppressed us, were abominable. For these things simply do not make men guilty of death, to be punished capitally by men according to the law of God. But when they are stated in such opposition to us, and serve the tyrant's murdering mandates by all those ways above specified, then we may have by the law of God and nature and nations destroy, slay, and cause to perish, and avenge ourselves on them that would assault us and are seeking our destruction, as it was lawful for the Jews to do with Haman's emissaries, Esther 8, verses 11 and 13, and Esther 9, verses 1, 2, and 5. This charge, then, cannot reach the case. Fourthly, though murders, and such as are guilty of death by the law of God, must be punished by death, for, quote, he that sheddeth man's blood, unquote, etc., yet it may be murder for a man to kill another, because he thought him so criminal, and because he thought it his duty, being moved by a pretended enthusiastical impulse, in imitation of the extraordinary actions of such as were really moved by the Spirit of God, as when James and John would have commanded fire to come down to consume the Samaritans. The Lord rebuked them, saying, quote, ye know not what manner of spirit ye are of, for the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them, unquote. Luke 9, verse 54 through 56. Such impulses had need to be well examined, for ordinarily they will be found not consistent with the gospel spirit, which is always averse from acts of cruelty. Blind zeal sometimes may incite men to fearful work. Yet the persecutors have often most of that spirit, as our Lord foretells, quote, the time cometh, that whosoever killeth you shall think that he doeth God's service, unquote. John 16, verse 2. Paul, in his pharisaical zeal, breathed out slaughter against the disciples. And Satan can drive men under several colors to act such things, as he did the Boers in Germany, and John of Leyden and his followers, whose practices are deservedly detested by all that have any spark of Christianity or humanity. But if this were espoused as a principle, there would be no security for men's lives. But hence it cannot be concluded that God may not animate some to some rare enterprises for the cutting off of tyrants and their bloody emissaries, incendiaries, destroyers of the innocent people, and putting an end to and stopping the career of their murderers in a time of real extreme necessity, the matter of the action being unquestionably lawful, their ends and intentions really good and commendable, there being also a deficiency of others to do the work, and themselves in some probable capacity for it. See Just Populi, Cap 20, page 410. Neither can it be denied, but true zeal may sometimes incite people to such exploits for the preservation of religion and liberty, their own lives and brethren, all like to be destroyed by the impunity of beasts of prey. This will be found very consistent with the gospel spirit, and though this principle be asserted, and also put in practice, all persons, notwithstanding thereof, would have sufficient security for their lives, except such as have really forfeited their lives by all law of God and man. Those that are led by impulses may pretend the imitation of extraordinary examples and abuse them, yet hence it will not follow that in no case these extraordinary examples may be imitated. Shall the examples of good magistrates executing judgment on idolaters and murderers be altogether unimitable because tyrants abuse them in persecuting the innocent? If this arguing were good, it would make all virtuous actions in the world unimitable, for these may be abused by pretenders. See Just Populi, UB Supra, page 412. But it cannot be charged upon the sufferers upon this head, that they had nothing to give as the reasons of their actions, but pretexts of enthusiasms. Fifthly, though a man be really so criminal as that he deserves death by the law of God and man, yet it may be murder to kill him if we do not certainly know it, and can prove it, and convict him of it upon trial. For no man must be killed, not indicted, or the cause unknown. Thus even magistrates may murder murderers when they proceed against them without probation or cognition according to law. Far more private persons. Thus the Abiezerites would have murdered Gideon, not only unjustly, for his duty of throwing down the altar of Baal, but illegally, because they would have had him brought out, that he might die without any further trial. Judges 6, verses 29 and 30. So likewise the Jews that banded and bonded themselves under a curse to kill Paul before he was tried would have murdered him, not only unjustly for his duty, but illegally before he was tried. Acts 23, verse 12. But this doth not condemn the actions of those sufferers in maintaining the necessary execution of judgment upon persons who are notorious murderers, yea, professing a trade and prosecuting habitually a tract of continued murdering the people of the Lord. Sixthly, though it should be certainly known and sufficiently proven that a man is a murderer, etc., yet it were murder for an inferior under a relation of subjection to him, to kill him as long as that subjection were acknowledged. For whensoever the common and mutual right or relation, either natural, moral, civil, or religious, to the prejudice or scandal of the church or state or particular persons, is broken by killing any person, that is murder, though the person killed deserve to die. As if a subject should kill as if a subject should kill an acknowledged king, a son by nature or in law should kill his natural or legal father. A servant should kill his master, breaking these relations, while their right and tie were acknowledged, as some of them must still be acknowledged as long as the correlates continue in being, to wit, that of a father is not broken by his becoming a murderer, and to the danger, detriment, and scandal of the church and state, that were properly assassination, for assassins are they, who being subject to others, either out of their own head, for their own ends, or by command of their superiors, kill their superiors, or such as they command them to kill, as Elstedius describes them in Theolo cap 18 de Homicidi reg 55. Therefore David would not kill Saul, because he acknowledged him to be the Lord's anointed, to whom he was under a relation of subjection, and because he was his master and father-in-law, because it would have tended to the hurt of the kingdom and involved it in combustions and contentions without the succession, and prejudged his own right, as well as to the scandal of the people of God, though Saul deserved otherwise to be capitally punished. So Ishbosheth was killed by Baanah and Rechab. 2 Samuel 4, verse 7. So Josachar and Jehozabad, who killed Joash, 2 Kings 12:21, were punished as murderers, chapter 14, verse 6, because they were his servants and did assassinate him to whom they were subject. So the servants of Ammon, were punished by the people as conspirators against their king and master, 2 Kings 21, verses 23 and 24, though Ammon deserved to have been punished as well as Amaziah was. Hence generally it is observed by some, that though right be given to equals or superiors, to bring their nearest relations to condign punishment, when they turn enticers to idolatry, Deuteronomy 8:6, yet no right or law upon any cause or occasion whatsoever is given to inferiors, as children, etc., to punish their fathers. See Poole's Synopsis Critic in Locum. However it be, this cannot condemn the taking off of notorious murderers by the hand of such as were no way subject nor related to them, but as enemies, who in extreme necessity executed righteous judgment upon them, without prejudice of the true, necessary, and chief good of the church and commonwealth, or of any particular person's just right and security, as Naphtali qualifies in pages 12 and 23, first edition. Seventh, though the matter of the action were just, and the murderer, such a person as we might punish without any breach of relative obligations or duties, yet the matter may aggravate it to some degree of murder, if it be done secretly, when it may be executed publicly or suddenly and precipitately, when it may be done deliberately without rushing upon such an action or hurrying the murder to eternity. As this also might have had some weight with David, not to murder Saul secretly and suddenly in the cave, or when he was sleeping. So Ishbosheth and Joash and Ammon were murdered. Or, if it be done subtly, when it may be performed in more plain and fair dealing, or treacherously under color of friendship, or cruelty without regard to humanity, and especially when the actors are at peace with the person whose blood they shed, as Joab shed the blood of war in peace, 1 Kings 2, verse 5, in killing Abner and Amasa so craftily and cruelly, and Absalom made his servants assassinate Amnon, 2 Samuel 13, verses 28 and 29. But this cannot be charged upon them who executed righteous judgment as publicly, deliberately, and calmly as the extraordinary exigence of pressing necessity and extremity of danger could allow upon notorious murderers with whom they were in open and avowed terms of hostility.